Our YouTube store back course talk about some FF7 Remake. We're here to talk about part 3 yet again. We haven't looked at Reddit in a while for like video topics and stuff, or at least not as often as we used to when it came to like the earlier days with like Remake and shits. And I came across a Reddit post talking about a teaser trailer for the third game next year, and I thought it was kind of interesting topic, so let's hop into it. So the post simply says, if part 3 really is coming in early 2027, like a lot of people suspect, because it's 3 years after Rebirth and also the anniversary, then that means we should see a teaser trailer in 2025, which is just next year. Not to mention full trailers and gameplay demos in 2026. That's a very exciting thought. So first off, I do gotta agree that it is an exciting thought, of course, because we are more than halfway through the year at this point. You know, Rebirth has already been out for over 4 months. Like, we're creeping towards that being 5 months old. It's, you know, not too far off from being half a year old already. It's kind of terrifying that it's moving that fast, but we're getting closer and closer to 2025, and if there is potentially going to be teaser trailers or anything like that, that's going to be exciting. As for the first part of their post, though, where they say that people suspect that the game's going to come out in 2027, that's not fan speculation. That's not something the community's just kind of hoping for. That came directly from the devs, I believe Katase from the Rebirth Ultimania, and that was based on the development period for Rebirth. So right here we have a translation from Audrey that we talked about on the channel before, but at the bottom it says, Katase mentions FF7 Rebirth was actually done within 3 years, since about 1 year was developing the DLC, for Remake of course, UV DLC, and he hopes to be able to stick with that schedule for part 3 too. So that's coming from Katase, right? Producer of Rebirth, that's in the Ultimania for Rebirth, that they're hoping to stick to like a similar schedule for the third game. Like, in their minds, if everything goes correctly, the third game's coming out within 3 years, 2027. Obviously, game development is complicating and a million different things could go wrong, or it could just take longer to make than what they're expecting. But it's not just like, you know, hopeful wishing from the community that it's going to come out in 2027. Like, that's what the devs are saying is going to happen as long as everything goes well. And something they were talking about a lot leading up from like Remake to Rebirth was like the reusing of assets, which obviously they did to a certain degree. I mean, the first game takes place entirely in Midgar. We did use Midgar a decent amount with like the Zack stuff, but overall, the majority of the world within Rebirth was brand new, right? They had to like craft the whole world of Gaia. And the different thing with like the first game to the second game versus the second game to the third game is a lot of that we're going to retread, right? Like, you go back into locations and you explore the world and stuff with like what's left of the FF7 story for the third game. And a lot of it is already there, right? You already have the world. The majority of the world is already mapped out with Rebirth. They don't have to make like a ton of new stuff for the third game. It just kind of depends on what all they want to add, I guess, that's new. Because all that's really left, at least I can think of, that's like major locations. We didn't go to Rocket Town in Rebirth, obviously, so we're going to go there with the third game. But then you have like all the northern shit, Icicle Inn, Great Glacier, Guy's Cliff, the Whirlwind Maze / North Crater. Like, we haven't been there yet. Then you have like Wutai and Medeal, right? And then like Underwater Reactor, I guess, and like the submarine stuff. Which there's a lot there, obviously. It's a lot of locations, but that's a lot of stuff we haven't visited yet. And then I think everything else, based on the original FF7, is backtracking shit. Also Fort Condor, of course, but that, it goes into like the backtracking stuff because that's like the huge materia quest. That's where we backtrack to like North Corel and Junon and stuff like that in search of huge materia. And that's probably where we're going to go to Fort Condor for within the third game. But besides that, it's like all like optional shit that was in the OG FF7 that they might make locations that you're required to go to. Like, people want there to be like a Knights of the Round quest, right, to help fight the weapons or some shit. So maybe they'll make like Round Island an actual location that you got to go to for like the story or some shit like that. And there's like the other like hidden caves and shit where there's like strong materia, and then there's like Lucrezia Crystal Cave and other stuff like that. There's locations that we didn't really go to, obviously, with Rebirth that can maybe be locations they craft for the third game. But the point of all this is that in terms of like the world for the third game, like a lot of it's already done because of Rebirth. So realistically, that cuts a lot of the development down in terms of like, unless you just want to add more to those locations, like you already have them there, right? You're already on PS5 only. You're making the game for the PS5, obviously. You just got to like drag and drop like Calm here or Midgar here or whatever, however that works exactly. Not to mention, if we look back at that translated tweet that we talked about previously in the video, in the beginning part of that tweet, it mentioned that the story was already done for the third game, and then Nomura was hoping they'd start voice recording very soon, and that was already a couple months ago at this point. So for me, with my, immense knowledge of game development, of course, I think 2027 is pretty much a lock. If we look at like the timeline of events that happened for Rebirth, we got a teaser trailer in the summer of 2022. Then we got the marketing for the game happening almost exactly a year later in the summer of 2023, and the game dropped in 2024. So if we flip that to the third game, you could have a teaser trailer next year, 2025, the marketing cycle happening in 2026, and the game dropping in 2027. And as we talked about on the channel quite a few times, and as the person mentioned in the Reddit post, the anniversary for FF7 is happening in 2027, right? You only get one shot at that shit. And the final game of the remake trilogy dropping within, the 30th anniversary for FF7 original, it markets itself, man. It's actually perfect. It's something I hadn't really thought about, even though we've talked about this 3-year thing before. You know, in my mind, I'm just thinking like third game's, you know, still a couple of years out, but realistically, we should have a trailer next year. Like, you know, a year from now, maybe even a little bit less than a year from now, we could be seeing the first like teaser trailer for the third game, which is kind of insane to think about. The only sort of downside, if we get a teaser trailer next year, is that based on what they did with Rebirth, like we got the first look trailer, teaser trailer, whatever you want to call it, and then kind of nothing for like a year straight until they started like hyping up Summer Game Fest of 2023, right? So that's kind of the downside. If we get a teaser trailer next year, it'll still probably be like a long time until the actual marketing cycle. We'll be talking about that teaser trailer for like a year straight again, which is good and bad, I guess. I don't know. It sounds kind of cool discussion. It's something I hadn't really like put into perspective, or really thought about until I seen this Reddit post, that we're actually not too far out from potentially seeing the third game. I also don't know exactly where they'd show the teaser trailer, but they seemed to like the summer when it came to Rebirth, right? And actually, I guess Remake as well, because when they first showed off Remake, it was at E3 2015, and they kind of re-showed it off. It was like E3 2019, right? So they tend to like the summer, so I don't, maybe they would do like Summer Game Fest again. I don't entirely know. But of course, pass off to you guys. So based on the fact that they want to keep the development period for Remake Part 3 very similar to Rebirth, that 3-year period, how likely do you think it is that we're going to get a teaser trailer next year? Because if everything lines up like it's supposed to, that should happen. Anyways, that's the video I do. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, _DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.